getting started on our Tuesday morning. So good to see everybody. I love it. Dave, I've missed you. It's been a while. You were busy.
Yes,
It's always
ma'am.
a good thing.
Been a little hectic, but a good hectic.
Well, glad you could make it today. Have you been active with anything that you want to share with us?
We are doing further preparation for the BV loss NPRM that now from the executive orders we hear are 30 days away. That's 30 days
Yes.
away from June 6, 2025. So
Yes.
we'll see what happens, but that's busy. And yeah, reviewing the two EOs, and there's a lot to them. So that's keeping us out of trouble.
Nice. So crunch time is on. It's something we've been waiting forever, and now it's here. It's like, oh, hurry, hurry, right?
Yes, we knew this would be a hurry up and wait.
Yes. Awesome. Siobhan, hi, great to see you. I love when you join us here today. And Carolyn, you have anything great that you want to share? Anything new?
I am happy to say I'm on round two of retirement.
No.
However, that lasted 15 hours.
Oh,
So
when you're in demand, you are in demand.
it's okay. It's
That's
okay. It's okay. I
sounds about
slid
right
back,
for
slid
government
back in there
type
for a
work.
second. I know. I know. It's okay. You gotta love them. Gotta love them.
Keeps you
Mary Ann,
busy and
good to
off the
see you.
streets and out of trouble, right, Carolyn? That's what my mom always said. So, yep.
Awesome. Mary Ann, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you. I volunteered as the secretary for the Women Drone First Responders group.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
So have you started or just now
Oh,
getting out there?
just getting up and running. Yeah, yeah,
Love
yeah.
it.
Because I advise the security department at my office, and so they want to have a drone fleet. So
And Amy's
Nice.
fabulous. So,
Oh, isn't she? Oh,
mm.
she's amazing.
she's a
Yes.
dynamo,
Yes.
dynamo.
So
So what's this about new executive orders? Are these since our last meeting?
I know, good things on the horizon.
Well,
David,
I
Dave?
don't know how good they are. I don't look at it. So far it doesn't look
Not
good.
all good, not all
Mm,
good. Some
no.
good,
No,
some
how
Mm.
good.
recent?
June 6th, 2025, last Friday.
Oh,
One of them is titled Restoring American Airspace Sovereignty, and the other is titled Unleashing American Drone Dominance. And of course, titles of EOs are frequently misnomers, so that's the start. So
Mhm.
the Restoring American Airspace Sovereignty is has appears to have an extraordinarily heavy hand on counter UAS. So we'll keep reading and see how this goes.
Awesome. Well, thank you and keep us posted. But
Oh,
with that, I am going to actually segue over to our spotlight speaker. We're super excited to have Tonie here with us today. So, Tonie has been an educator for several years now, and I personally have worked with her on the FAA FAST team in San Diego. And I admire her. She's so knowledgeable. And I am so excited to have Tawny Smith with us here today. So, Tawny, I'm actually just going to segue right over to you and I'll make you spotlight. I know you have a, presentation to share as well.
I do, and I appreciate the invitation, Desi. I know it's been a while, although myself and my classes, we try to log in to Coffee Connect at least a couple times a month. It's been a while since I presented. In fact, the presentation today, it's taken on a whole different perspective from what my previous presentations were. So we appreciate the opportunity to be here. I am going to go ahead and share screen. I have some slides this morning, but the focus that we're going to have today is on education, right? And how from within education, I feel we can do a better job maybe of supporting that workforce development need, but then also how those in industry and even students and teachers can also provide feedback that is going to play an essential role in the development of um, their programs. All right. So we're just gonna go all out. This should be fun today. Please put your questions in the chat. If you've got feedback, we'll stop along the way to get your thoughts and comments as well. But education, the final frontier. Now, does that mean that I think it's the end all? No, this is more of a personal statement. Like, is this where I'm going to be for a while? And the question comes up because I did not start in education. The last presentations that I've had here with Coffee Connect, some of you may have listened. I was talking DFR. So for several years, I worked for Flying Lion, first as an RPIC, but then I was doing the hiring and recruiting for their drone first response programs. And so maybe some of you here on the call, we've discussed it. We spoke about programs and what the requirements were. This is going to kind of take the lessons learned from that role that I was in as a recruiter and now the transition into education to see where we can create that bridge and maybe help educators and students, make sure that they're on the right pathway. Currently, I work as a teacher for the Sweetwater Union High School District, which is in the South San Diego County in California. For those of you that aren't local, we're one of the largest school districts here in San Diego. Although it is, we do have K through 12. I actually work in the adult school program. So I'm at the National City Adult School site. Advantage to being in the public school system, well, we do have a direct link, right, to the students and the programming and the support of the local school district. But adult school, right? What do we know about adult school? I knew nothing about adult school before I started working in this role. So I'm excited to share what I learned. As in addition to Flying Lion, I also own and operate a commercial drone services company, which really helps me with the student development and that we have through the school as well. What was it that we were looking for at Flying Lion? Anybody can learn to fly. And I think is one of the biggest takeaways from my time as a hiring manager and recruiter was that even those that are applying for jobs and responding to posts, they think, hey, I have my 107. That's really all I need. But as please see the video clip, there's so much more to it. As I was screening, I really was realizing that without formal education and without having guidance and an outline of what the expectations of a position were, it was nearly impossible for people to just on their own come into an interview or respond to a position and really be able to highlight their qualifications. Now, don't get me wrong, I think prep online, it's a great option for those who are able to successfully study. And maybe you're just good test takers. But I'm pretty sure many of you would agree, if you're in industry, that just having a 107 and being able to pass a test does not make you an asset in the industry, right? So what does make you an asset in the industry? Understanding the needs of the particular sector that you're in. Okay, so those staffing challenges that we had, dozens of applications, but did they qualify? Not necessarily. Had they ever had any flight safety training? The majority, no. Did they have flight logs? Had they been documenting their equipment maintenance and keeping track of how many flight hours they had so that they'd have a log to hand in at the time that they were applying? Most did not. I found that many of my interviews actually into training sessions because I was walking applicants through, well, hey, we're glad you applied, but open up the web browser and I'm going to show you, where you can go to make sure that you're registering your aircraft. Let's talk about your flight logs. This is how you're going to log. This is how you make sure that, you have an account and that you're keeping track of your information. Just general employability. although it's an excellent opportunity for individuals to work as sole proprietors or set up their own business, those that have an interest in coming in as a staff pilot or maybe taking a job with an organization that is just working in the development of tech, they've got to meet those minimum employability requirements. Having transportation that's reliable, making sure that they're consistent with their reporting and attendance, having basic computer skills and the ability to transition and adapt new technology, whether it be software, a program, a process. Now, training potential is related to that as well. One of the cool things about DFR programs is that no one was coming in with experience already on the platforms itself that we were using, but companies that are using unique programs are also willing to train, and that training adds so much value to those individuals that are joining the organization. Okay. Now, these challenges that I had, they're really not unique to DFR. I felt as I spoke to others in other industries, whether it be construction or delivery or just general R&D, they have similar challenges, right? So I was invited in one day as a speaker to a school that had a drone program locally. It was close to one of my locations that I was recruiting for. I had never heard of this program. And when I went in, I realized why. They were challenged with preparing students to be career ready. They had had a drone program for a few years. They had instructors who were coming from the academic field who didn't really have a good handle on what was going on in industry. So, of course, if those that are instructing and teaching aren't clear on industry needs, it was really challenging for them to meet, to make sure that their correct curriculum was preparing students. So they're like, please, 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 can you come in and help us? Our teacher is leaving. We have a position open. And I thought, this is a great opportunity. I am right across the bridge from my most demanding locations. If I can train the pilots that I want to hire, I'm going to kill two birds with one stone, right? I can staff, but then also have a funnel of students coming through. I had a 1-year plan. Um, I wanted to be able to create that curriculum and be able to then share it with other teachers and educators that didn't have the background in the industry that I had. And guess what happened to my 1-year plan? I have failed miserably. And I haven't failed. What's happened was I was very unrealistic with my expectations of how challenging it could be to curate that kind of curriculum within a year. So here I am, 3 years later. All right. This was me my first year. I was like, what have I gotten myself into? The nuances of being in traditional educational environment, but then trying to teach to a technical pathway where the technology and the demand is always changing was a lot harder than I expected it to be. But I didn't give up. And I would love to hear if you put it in the chat maybe, or if someone wants to share, if you're in an industry related to drones where you are recruiting or hiring, I'd love to see what some of the challenges are that you have had as well. If you're an educator and you're looking to implement a program that uses drones as an educational tool, share those challenges as well, and then we'll hopefully address those here in a bit. But with all those challenges, I was like, well, I got myself into this mess. Now, what do I do? Well, I had a learning curve myself. And one of those things that we are going to talk about today is how much an understanding of the CTE, or Career Technical Education Standards, really is one of those keys to bridging the gap between education with drones and drones in commercial environments. Now, maybe you never heard of CTE or CTE standards. CTE standards really describe the fundamental knowledge and skills that students need to prepare to transition into post-secondary education or a career. So after high school, what can we do to give students some of those essential skills that would allow them to be a success, either in going to an accredited college or another trades program, or perhaps transition into a job opportunity where at an entry level, they're able to then take additional training and build a career in a specific pathway. So that's what CTE is all about. Now, I'm showing the CTE California standards, but one thing to keep in mind is that the standards that your state uses vary. And I do have a link that I can share here in a bit. All right. But CTE in general, it's a legislative framework that without an understanding of that framework, it's impossible to present curriculum to teachers that they could actually teach to have it board approved, funded by grants, and approved by their school districts overall. So it's kind of like this chicken and egg situation that I call it. Education needs to better understand industry, but then industry also needs to better understand education. So how do we create that bridge? First thing, understanding that the CTE standards vary, right, from one state to the next. Now, the standards themselves are not specific to a job. The standards take categories of employment, areas of employment, and identify what the strengths and general skills are that are needed in each one of those sectors. Interesting thing about the California CTE standards, they were adopted back in 2005. Now let's think about what the drone industry was back in 2005. Had any of those skills been tested out? Was there enough feedback so that those who were sitting down and developing those standards could really incorporate these thoughts into the standards? Yeah, not really, right? It wasn't there. And so what we have to do is get really creative about looking at the standards themselves and then pulling out the pathways and the skills from each one of the sectors that are defined, and then creating curriculum that incorporates all of those elements. Now, there is, if you want to scan it, you can take a look at the nice California standards. Otherwise, I can drop this link in the chat. Let's see.
Also, Tonie, we do have a couple comments in our chat.
Okay.
Kind of based on the question that you had asked of them.
Absolutely.
Linda had said that we would like to hire people in sales, engineering development, and support roles who have basic drone experience. And it's been very difficult to find those sort of people, especially through like networks like Indeed and such like that.
Yeah.
And go ahead. Did you have
Yeah,
any
absolutely. I
comments?
can address that. And I find on the educational side, I completely understand where you're coming from, because while my students initially were coming out of my courses with an understanding of the drone technology, it very quickly became evident that I needed to kind of funnel them into a specific pathway to support the career that they wanted to have, where they were going to use drones. So if it's engineering, well, now we're going to have to enroll them in a program and understand the basics of engineering. If they're going into construction, well, they need to understand something about construction trades and infrastructure. If they are going to be in civil engineering, right? Okay, well, having a Part 107 and being proficient at flight is not going to qualify them to meet those minimum standards of whatever you're posting in your Indeed post. So part of the objectives that I have now for my class is early on, we start talking about these different industries that are hiring, where drones could be an element of your job description, but that your base knowledge needs to be, you need to have a foundation in whatever that industry or career is. So I think that was Linda. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Sales and engineering, absolutely. I'm not teaching sales and engineering, but if that's something that you have a need for in your area, I'd say definitely reach out to the schools and let them know. That's the great thing about drone technology. It isn't in and of itself a job, right? So everyone who's using drones, you're using it as a tool, but that tool still can be trained a specific outcome or desired outcome or purpose. So reach out to the schools teaching drones because I'm sure they would love to hear from you. And then they can adjust their curriculum based on what the need is.
Awesome. So
Another question?
we do have a couple more if you want to take a minute to address some of them. Um, and David said, have you considered seeking talent for drone-based jobs from the FP racing community? And he talks
Yeah,
about, the size and their capabilities,
yeah,
and they can
absolutely.
design and build.
Listen, anyone who was flying, and whether it was for hobby purposes or they were flying FPV or they were really, really proficient with flight, it's great because especially those coming from a build background where they're building their own, they're programming their own FPVs, that speaks to an interest that they have and a proficiency that they have in working with the technology. Now, here's where, at least in the DFR world, that created an obstacle because for a lot of these positions, the majority of what the pilots were expected to do was not actually flying, right? So it was maintaining and managing a system. So troubleshooting, overseeing, checking out error messages, checking connections. And for those that are extremely proficient in FPV, it just wasn't an interest that they had, right? So those in FPV to develop those skills, yeah, absolutely. The technical skills was an advantage, but not being able to actually, manually fly an aircraft and work through teleoperation systems, it's just in a different wheelhouse. So while we do have some of our pilots that are still doing, I know at Flying Lion, although I'm no longer there, I know they're still doing really well. They did come from an FPV background. Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. And just getting that stick time,
Mhm.
having that flight record available is also beneficial.
Mhm.
So, and then one more, Carolyn had said that flexing our existing asynchronous coursework to the needs and the goals of the students to enroll in the course. And so she brings up a good point that way, just trying to get that synchronized.
Yeah, and we're going to address that here as well because it's one thing to craft curriculum that's going to be beneficial for different specific industry sectors. It's a whole other challenge to now get that information and explain to students that are enrolling in a drone course what is it exactly that they're actually going to learn and make sure that those that are coming in are they have the right expectations. And this is just an example. One of my biggest takeaways from these last couple of years is understanding what educators are seeing when they're reading these standards. Now, when I look through California standards, you're not going to find drone in there anywhere, right? The words are not there. What we do find are skills, and pathways and certain standards that you look at it and you read it and you go, well, yeah, of course, that would be essential for someone to be successful in developing a career using drones, whether it be in engineering, design, and infrastructure and info systems. So, for example, we have here in the actual description of the transportation sector, they mention airplanes and then they mention specialty equipment. So initially, my thought was, well, of course, when we're talking about understanding airspace and designing of airports and air traffic management and UTM and AAM, all of those things seemed to fit in my mind very well under the transportation sector. But what do we see in most college and high school drone programs, there is very little discussion of anything related to airspace or air traffic management outside of 107 prep, right? And then when we read the standards, well, they also don't actually mention the management of airspace or design of airspace at all. If we go over to the infotech vertical, here they mention robotics, which is really where a lot of the schools, middle schools and high schools, are focusing the attention, which again is amazing. This is not to say that the curriculum that's existing is bad, but does the curriculum match the future demand for aviation in general, and then specifically remotely operated aircraft? Does it? Well, you'll have to read the standards for your state to figure that out. But what I did see is, at least for the state of California, drone programs are designated according to state standards as an infotech pathway. Meaning, in order for those programs, if they're being reviewed by school boards or considered for funding, and for the hiring of instructors and teachers, it's in an infotech vertical, right? So the standards for infotech also have to be built into the program. A successful infotech program could include building of a drone, programming, indoor robotics. We could do block programming. We could do, design challenges and all of these things. But interestingly enough, one of the things I would hear from students coming out of this program is they never actually flew a drone outside, right? So if we base the curriculum on a CTE level on a program that doesn't actually introduce the essential concepts of operating in a commercial environment to the students, we're missing a big chunk of what's needed to transition these students right using drones. And I hope that made sense to everybody. And if not, let me know. Okay. So did I mention I'm just finished my third year? So this is a lot of information, right? Remember, I've been trying to detangle all of this web because I'm still trying to stick to my original objective of let's smooth out this pathway between CTE students and being employable and career ready. So what are some of the advantages that students have when they're coming into a CTE program? These are some of the things that we picked up. That career exploration element is so very important, because I know for myself personally, when I was first introduced to the use of drones, I was like, why did nobody tell me about this in high school, right? How did I not know that this was an option, that I could take a skill, something that I was good at, something I was interested in, and develop it into a whole career? So part of what CTE programs receive is support from additional services, either for ESL students that maybe feel that higher education is an obstacle because, oh, it's a lot of books, it's a lot of studying, they're not familiar with the terminology. So the students are able to receive additional assistance to improve their language skills and their confidence. Ground school in and of itself, and being, again, bilingual, I have an advantage. But I tell my students when they're coming in, I don't teach ground school in Spanish because you've got to be able to understand and keep up with industry standards in English. So although we can incorporate explanations and an understanding of the terminology, it really is up to the students then to be willing to learn, right, and take on that challenge, because quite frankly, aviation and 107 regulations, it's a new language, whether English is your first language or not. Right? If you've never studied things like lift, and you've never read a sectional chart, and you have no idea what a METAR or a TAF is, well, that's going to be new terminology in any language. So in my class, I've got these big posters, right? They're the power of yet. So it's the, I don't understand this yet. This doesn't make sense to me yet. I'm not good at this yet. And I feel that coming into an environment of, a tech career, if we can open up that mindset for those that are starting out, it's going to be an advantage both for the students and then also for their potential employers. Our school also does like resume prep. We do interview practices. We have assistance from disability and resource instructors who perhaps a student is coming in and they have a learning disability that they've never realized they had. They just knew that they struggled. They struggled in middle school. They struggled in high school. They struggled to finish their assignments. That can really impact a student's willingness to reach out for specific career goals. I have some students that with the assistance of DARC, they do amazingly, extremely intelligent, very capable, and we certainly don't go easy on them, right? Sometimes we have the misconception of, oh, well, if someone's got a learning disability, you have to lower the standard of education. That is absolutely not true. What we have to do is pay attention to the particular learning needs of the students and see how we can adjust their curriculum or the way the information is presented so that they can learn their learning style and their learning needs and then be successful once they are on their own independently. Right? So our student engagement, it starts with the 107 prep, then goes to FA resources. I teach from the FA websites because once they leave my class, well, the expectation is that the operators keep up. It's not just the recurrency every 2 years, but we were talking about earlier the newest and the latest in what's coming out and what's happening. Well, if students don't know where to find that information during class, they're not generally going to look for it after class. So that's something that's really important. One of the complaints that I would get from my students when they'd first start my unmanned aircraft systems operations course is, are we going to do this checklist every time we fly? Every time? They're like, there's no way you do this every time we fly. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. You're going to do this every single time you fly, and you're going to like it. No, you may not like it, but you learn to value the process that happens pre-flight. It's an essential part of operating at a professional level, no matter what kind of equipment you're operating. It gets the students into that mindset of, I'm not just here to fly a drone, right? Which when they come in for ground school, so many people walk in the first day and they're like, where are the drones? Do we get to fly today? Yeah, no, nobody flies drones in my class until after they have their 107. Needless to say, that affects my student retention rate just a bit because having to go through the hard work of passing and understanding the regulations first is not what they're expecting when they enroll. So to the point that was mentioned before, yeah, how do we retain those that are serious about learning how to use this in accordance with the current regulations and using it successfully? Well, we do have a little bit of an attrition rate, right, from ground school into systems operations. But once they're in system operations and they understand the process, they're well on their way to being successful. We also, this past year, I enrolled in the Project-Based Learning Academy, which some of you may be familiar with project-based learning. It has been a great fit for our drones courses because it really is taking projects and putting the learning in the hands of the students. If you're not familiar with PBL standards, it's kind of a nuance of, it's not your traditional lecture reading test. It's instruction, demonstration, objectives for a project, and then allowing students to determine their outcomes as well. And then industry events. So we've run into some of you at CUAV and other places. So integrating those safety principles, it's taken me from wrong direction, taking me from learning to fly, FLI, when I was at Flying Lion, to fly. I hope you like my pun there, right? But really fully integrating this idea of safety into the operation of drones. Recently, and I'm not sure if they're on, but the San Diego County Office of Education did a fantastic job with hosting Drone Safety Day at their tech campus. And what I really loved was they brought in those organizations that are using drones and have fully integrated drones into their process so that students could get some real world feedback on how that technology is effective, but also to set the standard of what they need to do. So we appreciated that. So yeah, CTE, it supports the implementation of technology in all of those different sectors. Um, but there's still a gap, right? There's still a gap there a little bit. When you have educators that are not familiar with the inner workings of what companies are doing with drones, it's nearly impossible for them to prepare their students to be career ready right out of the classroom. So the more communication that can happen surrounding that, the better. So I would say make yourselves available, right? If you're in industry, make yourselves available. If you're in education, don't be afraid to reach out to some of those companies to get outlines, or other schools if they have successful internship programs or recruiting programs set up. Ask for their course outlines, right? We have them. Creating training opportunities is also excellent. And the training is not just for the students. Include your teachers in those training opportunities, because again, the more that they have an understanding of what the expectations are, the better they're going to be able to craft their curriculum in the classroom to meet those standards. And then understanding, again, the desired outcomes is great. Okay, and then there we have a bridge, right? So remember, instead of like a chicken egg, like which direction are we going? Where are we going? It's really exciting to see that the direction that the industry is going in. Most schools are having industry advisory opportunities. I know our school does it once a year, twice a year. If you've never heard of industry advisory, it's essentially where the administration and the CTE program instructors reach out to industry and they say, okay, come in. It's usually either an in-person or we do it on a webinar. The teachers walk through what the curriculum is that they're teaching to industry. And then industry is invited to say, yeah, we used to do that 5 years ago, but we're not really doing things that way anymore. Or to say, hey, this is what we think you should leave in your program, but maybe add in this element because our needs as employers have changed. It's a great opportunity for those in industry that are doing recruiting or hiring or talent searching to be able to influence the talent pool locally. So industry advisory is great. Educational programs. There have been some interesting conversations had over the last 3 years with suppliers. To teach a commercial program, one of my thoughts was, I can't teach a commercial program using educational drones alone. Educational drones are great for specific elements that are included in our industry sectors. But how do I make a candidate hire ready, job ready, and qualified if all they've flown is a Tello? Okay. And indoors, they've never flown outdoors. If they've never had the opportunity to troubleshoot a drone in the field when it is just not connecting, or how are they supposed to know how to manage the upload of a KML, a KMZ, if they've never done that before? How are they supposed to be proficient and confident going into a new position if they're handed a drone and they're like, but somebody put the batteries in for me at school. I'm not sure how this works, right? So software companies, hardware companies, or training companies that are in the commercial sector, It's really awesome if you offer educational discounts. Not all of them do, right? There's a few, and I didn't put their logos in here because I don't want anybody taking screenshots of this and then telling on me later on. But I'll tell you where we've had great success, and I'm sure there are other companies out there. So if you find some or you know of some, please drop them in the chat because it's a great resource for everyone. But I'll just name a few. Have a good partnership with a hardware distributor. Personally, we use Drones Made Easy wherever possible because they've been amazingly flexible with things like purchasing cycles. It takes a long time for schools to get things approved sometimes, and it's unfortunate. And in their case, it was an exception because it took way too long for their PO to be paid. However, the students had the equipment that they needed. We were even able to work directly with DJI, who doesn't discount. DJI was great about, linking in and saying, hey, well, what are you using our equipment for? Great. Well, we're going to work with whatever, your needs are as far as, pricing and things like that. It's helpful, right? It's very helpful because then it puts commercial grade equipment in the hands of the students where they need them. Drone Deploy as well is another one. I know a lot of the schools with GIS programs are using Pix4D or other programs. But if you'd like something with an easy learning curve that can introduce the basic concept of data capture and processing and reporting, without going deep into GIS concepts, something like Drone Deploy, they also offer educational discounts. Well, they're not Airware anymore. There's a few. We've had challenges. We have an invoice right now that is unpaid, and it has been for almost a year because we've been going back and forth with the manufacturer that when they issued the quote was issued well over a year ago. Quote was okay, approved. School purchasing processes are slow. It finally got to that final approval stage, but guess what? The original quote had expired. And our district policy is they don't pay unexpired quotes. There just is no wiggle room on that. So we go back to the supplier. Hey, can you change the date on your original quote so that we can actually pay and submit a payment? No response for months at a time. And then when they did, it was a nope. That quote was the quote. We need you to pay. We're going to send it to collections. It's been a challenge because they're not understanding that when working in education, you have to be somewhat flexible, right? So I would say those companies that are wanting schools to teach to the equipment, be willing to work with the schools and communicate at the outset what those purchasing requirements are. And then project-based learning support, that's going to come from the community. We love when, a realtor calls us up or a company calls up and says, hey, we've got this thing. Do your students want to come out and, use their drones to help us on this project? Absolutely. And the thing that I ask as a teacher is when they do, well, give us 15 minutes. That after they give you what you've asked for, after they've completed their flights, they've completed their processing, their reporting, give them some feedback and please be honest because it's much better if they're able to see from the business perspective, what the quality of their work was, what they can improve on. It's going to help them with their future job placements and their confidence as well, right? So I don't know if we've had up until this point any other questions that came in, Desi?
We don't, but feel free to put questions into the chat. Also, I know if you're watching through other social media platforms, the questions, if you put something or comments into the chat, they are forwarded to us. So feel free to make any comments. Tonie, I do have one question though regarding the industry advisory.
Yes.
If someone was looking for that type of input, how do they connect there?
So, any of the schools that have CTE programs, I would say just reach out, right? Reach out. You can call the school districts themselves. Our school, which I've got a QR code coming up here pretty soon, you can reach out to the teachers themselves. The great thing about CTE programs is that teachers, we really do have a lot of leverage as far as making adjustments in the curriculum as long as there is a justifiable connection between what needs to be taught and industry, I can make a change. If a company came to me tomorrow and said, hey, we're setting up, we're going to need this many test pilots, but they need to have an understanding of this system in order to be eligible, I can incorporate that into the curriculum. So reaching out directly to the instructors definitely works. But contacting the districts and the resource teachers to say, hey, we understand you have this program. Is there a possibility that, we could make suggestions or requests or establish a relationship or a partnership that's going to be beneficial to the students? 100% of the time, I'm pretty sure they're going to say yes, because the desired outcome for CTE is job placement, especially schools and organizations that are receiving funding. I have to report every quarter, every year, who's gotten a job, what our gains have been, how many of our students have been placed, whether it's in industry or somewhere else. So even if I have students that realistically don't have the skills or the interest level to go specifically into a drone operator position, I'm making sure that my students come out of my course with employable skills. We are using Microsoft Teams, and they have to digitally submit all of their assignments. They are creating a professional bio, and they're setting up their LinkedIn page. They're going through resume writing and updating. So if what you're seeing is that where you're at, you don't have candidates coming either out of the high schools or out of the adult schools or even the community colleges, reach out to them directly. That'd be great. They'd love that information.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of fantastic presentation. Thank you for the accurate look at the educational challenges. And you just brought up so many valuable points as far as making that connection and, like you put in your presentation, that bridge. And so I truly appreciate that. If anybody has any last minute questions, Tani, can I put your contact information into the chat?
Absolutely. And I also have it, I got it, I can put it up here as well. And kind of to address the other challenge that was mentioned at the beginning, like how do we find the students? And in speaking to one of the instructors, even because like Grossmont College here in San Diego has a drone program, Southwestern has a drone program, some of the high schools have drone programs. I have a hard time getting the word out there because I think most of our schools were not visible enough. So my students will be visible. They're going to be at the San Diego County Fair. If any of you go out to Del Mar at any point in time, check us out at the Student Showcase. My goal this year is to put our program in places where people will see it as an option and an alternative. So hopefully that will increase our enrollment. If we have increased enrollment and participation, then we'll also have more candidates for industry to pick up. And yes, my contact information is there. And if you're like, why so many email addresses? Well, they use my full government name for my school email address, but you can reach out to me at the school account. But over the summer, I try to limit how often I'm checking my school account. So you can reach me at my commercial email address as well, or give me a call. The QR code there, if you're in the Southern California area, you want to contribute to our industry advisory, or you want to find out more about our programs or send students my way. Eligibility is from 18 and up. I've got students 18 to 80 some semesters, right? Send them my way. And if there's something that you'd like to see in CTE, or if you have a tool already that's really working, I'd love to hear about it as well. Send it over.
Fantastic. Yes. So I did put your contact information in there. I did also put in your website, and so they could reach out via the website as well. And Tawny, you're just always a wealth of knowledge. So truly, I do appreciate you coming and spending your time here, sharing with us on the Coffee Connection. And if anybody has any other questions, feel free to reach out. And so we'll wrap it up with that. But just thank you so much for sharing. Thank everybody for coming in here this Tuesday morning because we look, well, okay, Tuesday morning in Southern California. Uh, depending on where you are, may not be. I know Sheila's ready for lunch. But we just thank you. Thank you so much. And take a snapshot or make sure you save the chat because I did put that information in there.
Hey, Desi, we
All
got
right.
one last question that came in on
All
LinkedIn.
right.
They'd like to know Tawny's thoughts on integrating the bridge at the university level.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Sharon.
No, absolutely. And that can be a bit challenging as well. Now, the great thing about being at the university level and incorporating drones is that you already have those established pathways, right? You've already got your engineering programs, you already have your computer programming, you already have your, software development and your gaming programs. So it's just a matter of taking those established career tracks and building in the elements that would allow students to finish with an understanding, a better understanding of proper implementation of drones. Now, one of the challenges that when I'm talking to industry, they're like, yeah, we got students coming out of the university, they've got a degree and all of this. They've never actually flown a drone and they have no real concept of airspace safety. Now, we think about something like drone delivery. It's great that programs can prepare. We can do the aircraft, the design. We've got the research and development for the actual craft themselves. We've got on the back end, the programming side and the development of the systems and the components. But if someone is designing components and we're still missing the actual requirements for the flight environment, that's where then we have another disconnect. So making sure that there's a good understanding of, again, that final outcome is going to be important for students that are specifically in a track where they're serious about using drones. One of the things that I did see, the FAA still has a great airspace safety initiative document. And I thought it was amazing because reading through that document, you can see it has a direct correlation to a lot of the CTE elements built right into the text of that document. So maybe taking something like that and then looking at your program to see where you can build those elements in. It could be also recommending, I have students that are dual enrolled. So I have students that come to me from Southwestern College because maybe they took the accredited course there, but they need the actual tactical flight and practical practice. They come to my course. Same thing with Grossmont. My focus is not on videography and film. They do a great job over there with that. I'm focused on the technical aspect of the use of the drone. So encouraging students to look for the programs that are going to meet that need that they have for their application, I think would be a quick solution if building it actually into your program is difficult.
Awesome. Awesome. I always love that you try to connect with other programs that are within the community. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so important because especially for education, we've got to learn from one another instead of everyone recreating the wheel. The other thing that we do is our students do use USI curriculum. They've updated their curriculum. So if you haven't taken a look at that in a few years, at a college level, they now have a VSO ground course and a VSO flight. I think it's line of sight. I think it's their line of sight course. Don't quote me. Reach out to your salesperson for USI and they'll tell you what they have. But they have added a focus of actual practical hands-on, which I think is a huge improvement over maybe, just the academic elements that they had initially in their curriculum. So at a college level, it's great because it's a college level curriculum. It's built for accredited universities.
That is good news, right? Getting that hands-on. Awesome. All
Absolutely.
right. Well, thank you, everybody. And we'll wrap it up for this wonderful Tuesday. Tonie, you are fantastic. And I thank you for sharing with us today. Everything is out there on the YouTube and social media. So if you wanted to catch it again, go back, watch it again. It is on the Women in Drones live YouTube. And so just in case you missed anything and you wanted to go back and see it again. All right. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you for
Bye,
having me.
Arlena.
Bye.
Thanks, Tonie. That was great.
Yeah, Sam, you're welcome.
Sharon.
Sharon? Oh, sorry. I didn't hear- I
Okay.
heard a voice. It sounded like Sam.